neck-throughs, guitars, they're like a guy that won't have a beer with you.
I want to hear what's pushing the notes.
Freddie King and B.B. King, Albert King, and let's not forget Burger King.
I don't want to blow my knuckle out.
Stainless steel is the work of the devil.
These go to 11.
From the East Amplification Tone Labs in Baltimore, Maryland, it's the Amps and Axes Show. With your hosts, Jeff the Godfather of Low Wattage Amps Bober and Mick Marcelino.
Well, good day to you, Mr. Bober.
Good day to you, Mr. Marcelino. It is yet another good one.
Yes, it is.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, first off, thank you to the listeners.
Thank you.
All the good stuff. Make sure you go to ampsandaxescast.com.
That's right.
And follow us on Twitter at Amps and Axes.
And there's the Insta something.
Yeah, we got Instagram. It's
that's right.
Amps _ the word and _ Axes. Sorry about that. You can find us, though. We're, it's not like we're lost in the mix somewhere.
Right. We're not in witness protection. So
no. And, of course...
I don't know. Are you? I
no.
don't know. Okay.
No, not at all. Okay. And, of course, follow us on Facebook, the whole bit.
Right.
Just right down the line.
Yada, yada. You know the drill.
Yes. And then go to iTunes and make sure that you give us a 5-star rating, because if you pump this up, we go up to the top, it'll start to get more behind it. The more it gets behind it,
the more people can know about it and start listening to it.
And then bigger guests, crazier guests.
Absolutely.
Like sort of today, but we're going to get into that.
Right.
Hey, one thing I wanted to talk about, and we're a couple weeks out on this because of the way we run this show, but the Grammys. Did you watch the Grammys, right?
For the most part. For the most part. I missed the beginning because I was I was in transit, so I didn't see the AC/DC boys kick the show wide open.
Okay, so here's how I watched the Grammys.
Okay.
When the last note hit and they walked off stage, I turned it off. My kids, I like to call the Grammys a room full of posers, because honestly, it's really gotten okay. I always look at it this way, and I don't know why, but even the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, there's a little bit of a rub. It's a lot of popularity contest.
It's a lot of politics.
Yeah, Deep Purple is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That is
sacrilege.
It's a sacrilege. I mean, seriously. They were as big a hitter in the 70s as Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath,
absolutely,
The Who. They were huge. They still are huge in Europe and Asia. I mean, they're giant. So I always look at those things and I kind of go, whatever, right? But it was very interesting to see AC/DC at the beginning, because the comments on Twitter and all were, oh, who are these old guys? And I'm like, yeah, these old guys are duck walking across the stage and tearing it up, and we're actually playing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I know them. They've said things like this in the past. Now, I don't know them, but I've heard their things in the past. They don't do any of that.
Yeah. I mean, we all know the 12 cabinets on each side were just for show.
Exactly.
They were just show backline. Although probably at least one of them was live.
There was actually some plexiglass up on the stage. So I think it was a retaining thing more than anything, because it was where the staircase was, and it was like there was two corners for that. But I'm sure it was something for the drums, because they had that drummer that they had for a couple years. Phil's still in trouble for trying to kill two people.
Yeah, he's still waiting for a court hearing or something like that.
I thought it was dismissed, but anyway.
It's back.
So they had the bald-headed guy, and I forget his name. He was on
it may come to me.
One of their big tours, and but he was the drummer.
Right.
And then of Steve Young.
Right.
Was playing rhythm guitar.
That's Malcolm's nephew, I think?
Yeah, and what's wild is he's got all of the Gretsch.
Oh, yeah.
He's using the Gretsch guitars, which is just Amish. You got to do that.
You have to.
Yeah,
you have to.
And but man, I bought the new album, and I tell you what, it's good. It's not bad. There's a couple songs I can throw away, but what are they in their 60s?
Right.
And they're still writing very close to what they were doing. I think the thing is, and I was comparing it. I have Back in Black, and I have some of the older stuff, with Bon on it, and I even have like one of the Fly on the Wall, or I can't remember. I never listened to it. It's not one of my favorites, but I think what they did is that when the production value goes up, on the actual making of the album,
okay,
it kind of loses the AC/DC feel to me.
And I really do think that something is lost. It's like remastering something and going from the version that you're used to hearing on vinyl
and then cleaning it way up. And granted, there are things you never heard before. Yeah.
But there's just something about the old school type of compression that happens.
And the dirt. And
how your ears remember everything going together,
yes.
And not being able to discern every little part, and that's okay, at least for me it is. I enjoy it.
I was listening, the tone is there, on the new album, but it's just a little bit too clean.
Well, like I was telling you, Frank Marchand, I was at his studio when it just came out. It had probably been out a week or two, something like that.
And he had the 96 kilohertz version.
Right, and I'm listening to this in the studio on studio monitors.
So it's absolutely dead on.
It really was like they were just in the next room and the light wasn't on, so I couldn't see them. It really was just like that. It was crazy. I mean, pristine crazy.
It's a little weird, and I was A-B'ing it with Back in Black. And If You Want Blood, which is their live album, so I had to put that to the side. But I had Powerage, and I was like, yeah, man, it's gotta, it's a little too nice. You know what I mean?
Too pretty.
Yeah. It's like, wow, somebody went in. Granted, I don't want to say it doesn't sound good. It sounds too good.
Right. It sounds like today.
Yeah.
And
I think
I don't know whether to call that a bad thing or a good thing. It's certainly a different thing. And I think for us who grew up on this stuff, the older stuff may just be more suited to our ears, or our ears are more suited to the older stuff.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, with all this modeling, with all the crap that they're doing with modeling this, modeling that, making people sing in key, I mean, all this stuff, why can't they simulate 2-inch tape?
Yeah.
How? Why? Why hasn't somebody done that? They do all the compression stuff. Oh, and they say, it's all the tube compressors.
And there's plenty of plugins out there that emulate all the compression.
Yeah.
But there are, and these guys have all the resources they need. There are plenty of real
2-inch tape.
But real compressors, that tube compressors.
Steve Vai's got
Vintage Audio King pumps a crap load of them all the time. They're out there. They're currently being made today. It's not like you got to find something in somebody's basement and clean it up.
They're made old spec,
right? And today, the only thing that's lacking is the 2-inch tape. But sans that, there still should be the capability to get this thing to sound, to era.
Yeah.
Because that's what the band came up sounding like, and I don't know. Am I just a old fart? I don't know.
I don't think so, man. Because here's the thing: if you tried to do When the Levee Breaks today with the recording equipment that they have today in that same house, that same castle that they were in, and he had the drum set in the living room, and it went up 2 stories.
Headley Grange.
Yeah,
in Headley Grange. Yes.
I mean. Do you think it would even come close to sounding like that? That delay that was in there was just so dirty because they just didn't have what we have today. I think it would just sound like, well, there's this echo
Right.
They just have an echo on,
it wouldn't become an integral part of the sound. It would just be something that was happening.
Listen
or
to somebody
something on
actually
top of-
play that song live, and you go, it's almost impossible to reproduce it because of that delay, that natural delay that occurred in that room. So I mean, the album is great. The songs are really good. For these guys being the age they are not needing a dime of money. You know, people start to lose that hunger. You know, you see
the rawness.
Yeah, you see it in bands.
Right.
You know, like when Van Halen first came out, they'd make an album in a week. They'd tour for 10 months. Then 2 weeks later, it was a second album, and then they would tour for 10
Guns
months.
N' Roses.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like boom, 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 one after another. And then all of a sudden, they're huge, and there's 7 years between Fair Warning and 1984. You know, and now 1984 was a home run, but you could hear the change coming.
Yeah.
You know, if you really think about that album compared to Van Halen 1. And, you know, and it was funny because Eddie didn't like Ted's way of recording.
Ted Templeman.
Yes,
Yeah.
Ted Templeman.
Well, he used to pan him hard.
Yeah.
You know, hard left, hard
And I know
right.
I'm off topic, but AC/DC still does this. Angus comes out of the right side, Malcolm comes out of the left side. And even though it wasn't Malcolm on this album, it was Angus on both sides, you could tell he used two different guitars. He probably used Malcolm stuff.
Right.
And he's on hard right, and that's on hard left. That formula, though, carried Van Halen through every album that just was epic.
Yeah.
And it's like Eddie, you know, I don't know if the narcissism started kicking in or just too much coke, but when he started doing, like, you know, the 5150 stuff, the guitars were coming out both sides. They were huge, and it was like, well, it doesn't sound like Eddie too much anymore.
Well, then you had keys. You know,
Yeah. But you know what I mean, though? It's like that element wasn't just the band. There was also this producer who had this unique way of capturing them for all those years.
Right.
And just, you know, that was the crux. I mean, that was the raw thing. And Eddie's thing was, what if you blow out your speakers? You can't hear his guitar. And I'm like,
you know, I think that's out of his hands, and he shouldn't worry about that too much. You know, but it was just an excuse for change.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
That's all. But
to fire a guy that's making some money off of your stuff.
So you turned off the Grammys after AC/DC was done.
I was done.
Done.
I saw the thing about Kanye, and enough with that family.
Right. We won't mention that name anymore. I'm sorry that Sir Paul got involved there. You know,
what is wrong?
I don't know, man. I don't know. It was. We'll forgive him for that mistake because I don't know. Maybe he didn't know what.
And poor Beck, you know, because he did that little stunt again, and it's like the guy. What's he get a pass or something because he's with a Kardashian who does absolutely nothing except for sell products and has a TV show because.
Stop now. Just stop now.
I mean,
you know, the cool thing about the Grammys were there were I thought a couple of good performances, and there were a couple of, like, people in the background that you didn't know were there. Like, you know, I'm blanking on the artists right now, but you know, we're both watching the TV. I'm going, is that Nuno?
Yes, he was there.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He was playing guitar in the background for something.
Well, he played with Rihanna for a long time. He did like a tour with her.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And he was like, you know, he kind of stayed in the background. Then every now and then she'd pull him out, you know, and they did their thing.
I hear Tal Wilkenfeld was there. I really didn't notice her, or I missed it or something, you know. But
I didn't. Like
killer
I said,
bass player and not hard on the eyes at all.
I
you know.
didn't.
I know you didn't.
Yeah,
watch it. So
I went down and turned on Velocity. It's a car thing. So
you're like Jeff Beck. You'd rather be working on cars than playing music.
Yeah,
you know?
pretty much. So we got a cool guest today.
We do. Someone who's been at it for quite a while. Again, started playing really young.
Yeah.
And saw him back in the day. I'll bring this up to him, and you know, we'll see. But I saw him back in the day at the Cool Club in Baltimore.
Oh.
And yeah, he's now he's got a a new group, which is, well, I think it's just one of his projects that he's out there with, and it's starting to get some notoriety because not only is he an incredible player, but the other guys in the band are just ridiculous too.
Oh yeah,
and they're starting to get noticed. I mean, he's been on like Letterman, I believe, and a couple of the late shows, and just stellar performance.
No, I got a couple things to ask him.
You got a couple things to ask him too, yeah. So, and he's been in a couple of other bands, He's been took Gilbert's place in Mr. Big for a while.
Yeah, there's a pair of shoes to fill, huh?
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, we'll take a break here, and we will be back with the current guitarist for the Winery Dogs, Mr. Richie Kotzen.
Hey, this is Mark Kendall from Great White, and you're listening to Amps and Axes.
All right, so as promised, we have on the line with us Mr. Richie Kotzen. Richie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing very well. It's my co-host Mick is here. Say hi, Mick.
Hey, how you doing, Richie?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, man. One thing before we start, I wanted to make sure that everybody knows Richie is not a chooch.
Okay.
What's that? What do you mean?
You did an interview where they asked you for your rig rundown, and he goes, look, the strap where you hold the guitar. He goes, if you got it up real high, I don't care how good you are, I'm out. And he goes,
yeah.
But also, if you have it down real low, it ain't working either. He goes, somewhere in the middle. He goes, try not to be a chooch.
Oh my god! I remember that interview. I think it's like some people actually got angry. Like there were people like they were actually like, stupid enough to think that I was serious, and they were sending emails like naming guitar players that wore the guitar high that were better players than me. It was like so ridiculous. And, like obviously, you're not mentally sophisticated enough to realize that this is a fucking joke.
Well, I was laughing.
I'm not going to mention where most of these people conduct their business,
exactly.
But we won't go there.
Yeah, they're not on the same stage that Richie's on.
Right. Yeah, and they probably don't talk on the. I'm not even going to go there. Forget it. I'm not going to go there. Stop me now. So, Richie, thanks for taking the time, man. I know you're a busy guy, and just back in from Japan, right?
Yeah, I actually haven't toured Japan as a solo artist since. Well, I think I haven't actually toured since I did the Rolling Stones tour in 2006. So I went back there with the Winery Dogs and did 3 dates, but this is the first time I went and did like a proper, 4-show solo tour with my own band. So it was kind of cool to get back there. But man, they're just so efficient. We had to rent backline and all that stuff. And a lot of times when you do that, you get equipment that's messed up. And they had great equipment over there, and the people that worked coordinating everything were just fantastic. So it was fun to go back there.
Nice. So I was going to ask you if it was Winery Dogs or solo, but obviously you already answered that. It was a solo thing. So, and this is for your new release that's out?
Yeah, I have a new record out called Cannibals, and it came out, I guess, first week of January.
Nice.
And so I ended up releasing a couple singles last year. I did a single for a song called You. We did a music video for that. And then the song Cannibals I had been playing on my last tour, which started in September in Europe, and then we went to South America, and we went down, Mexico. We did the month in the United States. So we actually were playing the lead track off that record before the record was even available, which I've never really done that before, but it seemed to work out, And then, now the record's out, and I pretty much wrapped up my touring for the next couple of months. It's been out for so long between the solo stuff, and then I went into the Winery Dog album cycle, and then I went straight back into my solo stuff. So for the time being, I'm going to let it end with the last Japan run, and then take a break. And probably the next time I go out and tour will be after we release another Winery Dog record.
That's cool. Nice.
And
nice.
that song is really cool. I've seen the video.
Cannibals?
Yeah. Well, the U. And,
you.
Yeah. And now the thing is, Richie, you're huge in South America.
I actually have another video coming out probably in the next week. I'm not ignoring your question, but we just shot 2 more videos. We did one for the song In an Instant, and then we did one for The Enemy, which is still not finished being edited, but we just wrapped up the edit for In an Instant, and I think it's going to be pretty cool. Pretty excited about that. But South America's been good for me, you know. It's weird, you know, 'cause the perception of, you know, where someone's huge or not. I mean, I'm not really huge anywhere, in my opinion, but, you know, I'm lucky that I have a fan base that is in the United States, but also international. And so I do spend a lot of time touring in Europe and in Latin America. I guess it's weird, though, because you look on Facebook, like they do this demographic thing. I don't know how accurate it is, but it tells you, like, where your fan base is. And despite all this international touring, the majority of my fan base apparently is here in the United States, which is kind of interesting because I tour the least amount here.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I guess number 2 is Brazil, and number 3 for some reason was Italy the last time I looked. So I don't know how accurate that is, but it was kind of fun for me to say, oh, where are these people that are paying attention to me? You know?
Well, you know, it's funny because I often, and I wanted to ask you this. I mean, he must be the most liked guitar player and the most hated. And the reason I say that, the reason I say that, and hear me out here.
I don't want people to hate me. Don't tell me anybody.
It's give the man a complex, right?
It's sort of like this though. Richie is a fantastic guitar player and an awesome singer, but then the part that guys hate is, he looks like a male model.
Right.
There's none anymore, believe me. Those days are long gone.
I doubt that, my friend.
And then on top of it, you know, he's a really insane picker. He decides, well, I'm just going to get rid of the pick.
Yeah, I was going to get into that.
And he still plays the way he does without. I know. I mean, what brought that on, man?
Shred sans pick. That's just crazy.
Why? The question is, why did I stop using a guitar pick? Which people seem to be intrigued by that, but I really was not happy with the way I was playing. I was on a tour somewhere, I believe it was in Brazil, and I just was having what I would call a bad night after night. And so I wanted to kind of change what I was, you know, my perception on the instrument. So I obviously wasn't going to get any better, you know, practicing that night, you know, for a couple hours in the hotel room. So I thought, what can I change, you know, to force me into a different direction? So I decided to try to get through the whole show without a pick, which playing without a pick is nothing new. I mean, I've done that many, many times. There's many songs that I would perform, you know, with finger style playing, and you know, it's not really a big deal. But where it was a little tricky was trying to get through an entire set when you have music that has, you know, it's been written, you know, with riffs that, you know, you're using a guitar pick. So by the end of the night, you know, I realized, well, I played a lot better. You know, I actually eliminated a lot of my guitar playing vocabulary. No more alternate picking, no sweep picking, no trills, you know. So a handful of things that kind of went out the window. But by doing that, it forced me to connect more with the instrument, more with the music, and I was phrasing in a more musical fashion. And so it kind of evolved, and now what's happening is a lot of those techniques that I lost are coming back. You know, I found ways to reintroduce, you know, this sweep picking and, you know, the trills. Found, you know, I'm developing that I can do that. So It's just an evolution. I don't want to be like, you know, there's no reason to keep doing the same damn thing over and over again, especially if you're not inspired by it. So in order for me to keep the inspiration, you know, I need to feel like I'm growing, you know, and that was a process, a step to take to force some kind of action, you know, it forced me to go back and practice and try to, you know, widen my vocabulary, you know?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, baptism under fire, you know, it's, I'm just going to purposely go out and just forego the pick, you know, for an entire show in front of people.
That's like Cal Ripken changing his batting stance.
Yeah, right.
What? What did you say?
Cal Ripken, you know, the reason that he lasted as long as he did in his career is because he kept changing his batting stance.
Oh, yeah.
So he would have these crazy batting stances that, you know, he paid good money to learn how to do that from trainers. But, you know, throwing the pick away like that.
Yeah, but this wasn't like he decided to do that and, you know, woodshedded without a pick, you know, plectrum free for 3 months before he went out. He said, no, tonight I'm just going to throw the pick away, you know?
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, definitely the pressure element there.
Wow.
But
yeah. You know, I mean, sometimes pressure is good, you know, it really pulls something different out of you.
And another thing too, there's a couple videos that you can see of Richie where you're singing with what he's playing. Mm-hmm. That is amazing to watch, man. How did you learn? I mean, how did you develop that?
But develop with singing and playing at the same time?
No, the where you're singing the notes that you're playing.
Oh, well, that's fairly. That's not really difficult, to be honest.
He went to the George Benson School.
Because George Benson. There you go. One of my first concerts, actually. I don't know which one was first, but it was George Benson, and then shortly after that, Stevie Wonder. But it could have been Stevie Wonder first. I just don't remember. But I do remember one thing. I was very young, and it was at the Valley Forge Music Fair, which was a stage that went in a circle. And that were my early concerts. And, you know, obviously George Benson, you know, that was his trademark thing. So probably where I picked that up and where a lot of guys picked that up, you know. But I think it's kind of an easy move in the sense that if you sing, you know, and you're playing a melody or a phrase on the guitar, you're just simply, you know, singing what you're playing. That's kind of how my playing evolved anyway. Like, I don't know. I mean, I know theory, but I don't know a lot of. I'm not a theory guy. You know, I don't think about theory at all when I play, but I do think in terms of phrases, and oftentimes, even, you know, when I'm off mic, I'm singing, you know, internally the phrases that I'm playing. Now, not necessarily something that's blazingly fast, obviously, but a lot of the, you know, the more melodic phrases are, especially during improvisation, almost 90% of the time when I improv something, which is pretty much every time I do a guitar solo, cool. I'm hearing the phrase, you know, in my head, and oftentimes I'm quietly singing it, especially if you kind of get into that zone, you know, where you're kind of tuned out, and you're just kind of in the music, then I'm making a lot of noise and oftentimes singing what I'm playing, even if I'm off mic. So that's kind of just a normal thing for me to do.
That is awesome.
And that's, I mean, we've had this discussion before on the show with a few guests. It's the most memorable solo lines
are the ones
are ones that non-musical people can walk away singing, you know? And
sure.
It's if you can, you know, if your phrasing kind of lends itself towards that, it's I think it's much more universally acceptable for people to hear and enjoy, you know. So,
well, that thing happens too more so. Like if I'm playing a melody, like a literal melody, like da 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 da, like some kind of diatonic melody, I'm not going to sing. I'm not singing that in, you know, in any facet. But if it's a more of a pentatonic or blues-based thing that is, you know, something that I'm feeling on a phrasing level, then I'm almost always singing it, you know. So I can't really demonstrate that without an instrument here, but you might understand what I'm trying to say.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if I was playing the solo from Sweet Child of Mine, I wouldn't be singing that, you know. It's just something that I would be playing. But if I'm in a jam session and I'm like, and I play like one of those kinds of lines, at that point I'm definitely singing it because it's something that I'm literally making up on the spot, and I'm kind of feeling that as opposed to a pre-worked out melody that I would play as part of the song, you know.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you mentioned Valley Forge Theater, which is Pennsylvania.
He's
and
from there,
yeah,
right?
so let's go back just a little bit. Let's go hit the Wayback Machine and find out where Richie came up and when he first decided that he wanted to play this instrument.
The Wayback?
Yeah, go hit the Wayback Machine.
Oh, the Wayback. I think you hit the Wave app.
Oh no, I'm sorry. That's something new we're working on. We don't know. We're not saying anything about that yet.
So you're asking me where I grew up?
Yeah. You're a PA guy, right?
Yeah, I was born in Reading, Pennsylvania, and
Wow.
I grew up in that area, which is about an hour northwest from Philadelphia. So I was exposed pretty much to that Philadelphia radio, and by the time I could drive, I was hanging out down on South Street, and there was a place called Dobbs that we used to go to where they used to have jam nights, and so I was briefly kind of involved in that music scene before I moved to California. But I moved to LA when I was like 20 or 21. So at this point now, I've spent more than half my life living in Los Angeles. But I remember when I was in Pennsylvania, I grew up kind of out in the country, so to speak. I wasn't far from a major city, but in order to go anywhere as a kid, I had to be driven. I wasn't going to walk to a neighborhood and hang out and play sports.
Right.
So that kind of forced me into a situation where I had to find something to occupy my time. So that became the guitar. And then by the time I was, I guess it was in the 7th grade, somebody posted a picture online of me and my friends from the yearbook. We had our first band, and we started playing like high school dances, and we played like some little business openings and stuff like that. And then an older guy who was an established musician in the scene heard us and formed a band with us, and we started playing in bars. And by that time, I was 15. So I was in a full-time cover band from the point of being 15 to 17. And that ended with us making an EP with original music. And we ended up getting some label interest, but unfortunately, we just were not able to really give them more material. And I don't quite remember why, but I do know at that point I was really fed up with being in a cover band and just wanted nothing to do with it. And I wanted to make my own music.
Nice.
And I knew that the other guys were all adults and really were looking at being in a cover band as a vehicle to pay bills and live. So it kind of got a little convoluted and a little weird, at least for me. And I kind of pretty much decided that I didn't really want to deal with being in a band because I don't want to deal with other people and their baggage, So I started focusing on how I could get a deal on my own, and that's when I realized the Shrapnel Records, would be a good outlet for me. So I started sending, songs to them, and ended up getting a record deal that way.
Nice. Were you already playing in kind of like the Mike Varney Shrapnel style when you started sending him things? I mean, did you develop that while playing in the cover bands?
I was always kind of, there was a certain level of natural ability I had on the instrument, and then there was a certain level of kind of showmanship that I had back then, so I had a lot of attention as a local guitar player. I would say half of it was because I was very young and I played, for my age at that time, I played a lot better than, most of the adults that were around me. But at the same time, a lot of that was masked with, my showmanship. So once I kind of started focusing on the whole Barney thing, I started realizing that the playing wasn't really up to the level of a lot of those guys. And a lot of those guys were not really, I was more of a live musician. Like I probably had played, 500 shows by the time I was featured in Spotlight. I mean, we played 4 nights a week. And I started that band doing it when I was 15. So my experience was really about live. And a lot of the guys, back then that were getting signed weren't really experienced in playing live as much as they were sitting in a room woodshedding, over and over and over. So their techniques were super clean. And somehow I was able to make a demo, and I got the attention of the label, and they put me in Spotlight. And they ended up signing me because they liked the material that I wrote, and so I got a deal. But when I actually sat down with Jason Becker, I remember meeting him for the first time, and it was just like, it was so crazy how accurate and precise everything he played was. Like, holy shit! Like I was like doubting everything. What the hell am I even doing out here? You know? I'm like,
Wow.
I don't play like this. You know, I don't. I'm not this kind of musician.
Yeah,
and then, you know, it forced me again, like, you know, just the whole fingerstyle thing we talked about earlier. Suddenly I shifted my focus, and, you know, I got it together, and I made my first record, and that was kind of it. You know, that was kind of got me in the door. But immediately after I made that instrumental record, I realized that I have no passion or interest in instrumental guitar music. And so the second record, I was singing on the second record and doing vocal songs, and you know, that's what I did.
Wow.
Well, you know, think about that whole thing, because he goes out there and, you know, he's the hot guitar player. I mean, he was big. And then you meet Jason Becker, who it literally is like a machine. Yeah. I mean, the guy would do these crazy solos while flipping a yo-yo.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it just, you know, they're doing a documentary about his, you know, short career, because he has the ALS.
Right.
But I mean, you know, could you imagine that's the first guy you meet?
Right. Yeah. We got this little band called Cacophony.
Yeah.
Know, and,
Yeah.
Yeah. And also Greg Howe too back then, because Greg was he lives about 45 minutes away from where I live, and once I found out about him and realized that he got signed to Shrapnel, I started hanging out with him and going up to his house and asking him, you know, what was Mike Varney like? And we would sit down and jam, and he would show me stuff. And, you know,
yeah, he's a monster.
It was kind of cool, you know, because at times like, I was wondering, well, do you think Mike's going to sign me? He was, well, I don't know. I know he likes you. You know, we'll see. You know, and all I wanted to do was get signed to Shrapnel Records, and then somehow, you know, thankfully it happened. But that was a fun time back then because, you know, being that young, you know, 17, 18 years old, and getting that kind of opportunity to leave a small town like, you know, like Reading, Pennsylvania, and go out to San Francisco was all very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's funny about Reading. I go there every year for the drag racing. I go there for a national event.
You go?
Yeah, and it's heavy Amish country. Mm-hmm. You know, you see the
Maple Grove.
Yeah,
that's the drag.
Yeah, Maple Grove. You can actually see the Amish kids sitting on the side of the hill that's behind where they take off.
Wow.
Because they don't come into the event, but they sit up there and watch like all the crazy people with the 300-mile-an-hour cars.
Right, with things that run on gasoline instead of horses.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, because back in the day, I can remember seeing you in Baltimore at the best rock club on the East Coast.
Hammerjacks.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That was back in the day. Were you signed at that point? Do you remember?
Probably not. If you saw me at Hammerjacks, that's the only time I played there with my cover band, so I doubt that I was signed.
Okay. So you were still living in the Pennsylvania area probably at that point? Yeah,
definitely.
Wow.
That had to have been like 87 or 88 when you saw me there.
Yeah, I think so. It had to have been, you know, towards the end of the 80s.
That's like,
that was a place.
Yeah, man.
Oh yeah, it was cool. Yeah, that was the place for sure.
For sure.
It's now a stadium. Actually, it's a stadium parking lot.
Yeah,
yes.
Parking lot H.
Oh my God, so sad.
Well, they're actually attempting once again. It never worked in the past, and I doubt it will work this time. But they're attempting to build another Hammerjacks now, and it's supposed to be built in the next year or so. But you can't relive that era. It's just not going to happen.
No. And now it's sad. And I don't know if you experience this or not, Richie, but you know, I've seen like some really, really good musicians that are out doing their own original thing. And when you watch the YouTube video, all you hear is people talking because they stifle the vibe.
I guess, I mean, you know what happens? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't really get too caught up in the nostalgia element of it. I mean, I guess that's not really what you're talking about. You're talking about people being, you know, uninterested, but you know, that happens, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe the culture, I mean, people like, I'm assuming that we're all probably close in age.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're talking about Hammer Jackson and that era of music. So, young people today, it's just a different thing. They have so many other distractions. And I know for me, when I was younger, around that time, it was either, music, sports, or you went to college and tried to figure out what you were going to do. And now I just think there's so many other distractions.
Oh, sure.
For people that music, the arts at least, are not what they were. I mean, it's definitely weird. You have a situation where, as a musician, people are making records now and having hit records that 35 years ago would never ever be able to make a record just because they don't have the skill set that would be required
right.
to actually. Sure. And the genre didn't exist. It's kind of. I mean, I don't know. It's weird. It's just like you have these people like Kanye West talking about being an artist, and I was just so curious what his deal was, because all the chaos he constantly creates about what a real artist is and all this. And so I was Googling on the internet last night, and it's weird to me. It's just like I understand that's a genre of music, but there was a time where these people that are talking about being a musical artist, they wouldn't even be allowed in the studio. I mean, I probably doesn't even understand how to even turn on a Pro Tools rig or put tape on a 24-track machine or tune a guitar. I mean, maybe he does.
Or play anything.
It doesn't seem like it. I mean, it just seems really... The whole thing, I feel like sometimes when I watch some of this stuff and listen to some of these people talk, that I've been I've been dropped off on another planet.
Yeah,
bizarre.
That's true.
I mean, it's
not that it's good or bad, because I know people like a lot of that, so that's fine, But when you start talking about what art is, it's like, God, I can pretty much. I mean, I can claim anything to be art. Anything that I do that creates something that wasn't there before. Is that all it is, or do you need some kind of skill set to combine to do something really special that moves people? I mean.
That's a great way to put it. A great outlook on it. I mean, the word artist at this point has been completely redefined.
Oh, it's just
and watered down, and it just doesn't. It doesn't mean what it should.
I don't think it means anything when you say that. It's like because when I think about people that I consider were real artists, and then now suddenly. It's like that label just kind of devalues the word completely. It doesn't make sense anymore. It doesn't matter. I don't really give a shit. I really could care less. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect what I do.
Right. You're going to do what you do regardless.
Yeah.
What?
You're going to do what you do regardless.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just when you sit and you listen to it, with the experiences and knowledge that you have, you're thinking, what the fuck is going on? What the hell happened? I don't understand.
Yeah, it's
I choose not to really try to dissect it, because it's like I said, it's like almost being on another planet and trying to understand how these creatures are walking around without breathing air.
So when did the train fall off the tracks, man? It's crazy. I mean, but speaking of artists, I mean, you did your first. You were 19 when you did your first album, right?
Well, it was released when I was 19.
Oh.
But I recorded it the year prior, and then the material, much of that material was written even prior to that, because what happened was I was sending these tapes in to, the magazine, a magazine called Spotlight, and I was trying to get featured in the magazine. So then I was about 17. So I had a bunch of songs, and then I wrote a bunch more, and so... Yeah, the record came out. By the time the record came out, in my mind, I was already completely disconnected with it. So,
Wow. You had moved on.
It's time to make a record. It's writing for a long time, and then by the time it's done and comes out, when you're that young, it's very possible that you've mentally moved on.
Mm-hmm. What was your gear like back then? What were you playing and recording with and playing live with?
Well, I played a Yamaha SG 2000, and I had a 3000 as well. those were the guitars that Santana was playing at the time. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're kind of like,
yes,
yeah.
They look like an SG, but they're really more like a Les Paul.
Right.
Real thick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I also had a Kramer with a Floyd Rose that I played, and I had an Ibanez guitar. I think it was called a 760 or something like that. But on the record, I used the red Yamaha, and I used the Ibanez. When you hear the tremolo bar, that was just Ibanez, and when there's no tremolo, it's the Yamaha. But shortly after that, I got an endorsement with Ibanez, and they made me some custom guitars. And I was with them for about a year and a half. And then before I made my third record, I bought a pair of Fender guitars. I bought a Telecaster and a Strat. And at that point, Ibanez launched a new company called Starfield, where they were making Telecaster-style guitars. So I had a few of those made for me, and I was playing those at Starfield. And then Fender approached me and said, "Hey, why are you playing, a copy guitar when you can play a real one?" And I said, "Okay."
Nice.
So they gave me two amazing Fender guitars, and then that happened in '91. And then shortly after that, maybe '96, Fender Japan approached me about making my own model. So,
and that was weird too, right? Because they didn't release it in this country. So guys were having to go on eBay and find them used, his signature model.
In Japan.
They could get them new, too. Japan was actually sending them here, but about 3 or 4 years ago, finally, Fender Japan acknowledged that the instrument was selling well and that it made sense to make it available worldwide. So
nice.
You can get it now.
For the last 3 or 4 years, it's been available everywhere.
Yeah. And it's sweet.
That's really nice.
It's a Telecaster that, of course, it's designed by Richie.
I've seen them. I haven't played one yet,
but it's got the chopper T, and it's definitely done right.
Mm-hmm.
That 12-inch radius on that, right? I
don't know the actual number. I just know that I went through a lot of necks to find one that I liked. It's a little thicker than the average neck,
Yeah.
But I kind of have a body like a chimpanzee, where I have long arms and big hands, and so it makes sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they're offering, you get it to the point where you play what makes sense for you, and I'm sure a bunch of other people have the same requirements.
It's really neat to see guys like Richie that did not just stay with that Ibanez camp, the shredder guitar. He went with the this Fender, and it's your favorite guitar, the Telecaster,
right?
And it's a gorgeous instrument on top of it, but you can obviously see that the range of this thing is everything from when he just wants to tear it up all the way to the cleanest, nicest, So definitely very cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is about the guitars, making the switch. I mean, to be really honest, like back then, the whole point of how we would promote those records was to get an endorsement. And in that endorsement, you would look to get a guarantee of a number of ads run, and you would look to get in Guitar Player magazine a sound page. And so at a certain level, you may have wanted to be with Fender or Gibson, but it gets to the point where whatever company is going to get behind you and promote you and make what you want, back then at least, that was the logic. But, eventually, you're not a teenager and you're making different kind of decisions. And so what happened to me, literally, is after I made my second album in 1990, I was like, well, I'm not getting the sound that I need. And I feel like there's limitations with this instrument. There's things that are good about it, but I'm kind of locked into one thing. There's instruments where you have the locking tremolo system and all that sort of thing. I mean, they just sound different and they feel different. And there's something about a Telecaster for me that it's like a blank canvas. There's a huge dynamic range there.
Yeah.
So if I play quiet, the guitar is going to be quiet. If I play loud and percussive, it's going to respond accordingly. And a lot of those other guitars that are more, I don't know what you call it, but like I said, the locked tremolos and all that kind of instrument, at least in my experience, and I have quite a few, you can play that thing hard and you can play it light, and it just doesn't fucking matter. It just has that pretty much, you know, there's one thing that instrument really does really well.
Right.
You can kind of play at the other sounds, but you don't get the other sounds. So, at least for my ears, I prefer, and it's actually not even just it's the way it feels. It's the responsiveness, you know. It's like trying to make a car slow down, and you don't feel like you're slowing down, and you're trying to speed up, and you don't feel like the car's really speeding up, you know. It's like a lag.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen, you know, when you're playing, you know, like a Telecaster. But at the same time, for a lot of guys, they don't want that because it will expose, you know, it's not very forgiving. You know what I mean?
Well, it's like Jeff's amps.
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
It's like what?
Jeff is Jeff makes East amplifiers, and his amps will tell on you if you whatever, you know, it's kind of what you put in is what you're getting out.
I mean, we even used to hear that back in the Buddha days when I was doing Buddha. It's like, I'm not good enough to play this amp, you know, and you have to be better to play my new ones now. But it's yeah.
Well, I was just going to talk about amps. I mean, I've been using for a long time on and off, but like the Marshall Plexi with 4-input, you know.
Sure.
I don't know, like the 1959 HW, which is like their hand wire reissue. I have a 67. I have a 72 or 73. And I have a couple of the new reissues. But those amps have a very, you know, that kind of thump and that fast attack, and it's playing quiet, they're really clean, but if you hit them hard, they're very aggressive, and, you know, a lot of people don't really understand how to run those amps to get them to sound the way, you know, they should.
Right.
But for me, you know, I kind of figured out how to get my sound with that amp, and it's great because there's so much dynamic range there and responsiveness, and you really feel connected, you know. But that's not for everybody. I understand that.
No, it's like a telly. It's another, you know, instrument like a telly, where it's like this palette that you need to know how to work. It's not, again, it's not an amp that covers anything up. It's not an amp that practically plays itself like we know so many of out there.
Sure, yeah.
You know, and those kind of things, guitars and amps that do that really inhibit a player. I mean, I can understand where you get to the point where you go, I want to play and hear things that this guitar or this amp is no longer enabling me to do. And that's when you're growing as a player, and the instrument's got to grow with you, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's you know, I'm glad you know how to harness the power of 100-watt, you know? That is awesome. Do you, I mean, we're up to like, what, this is your 20th album now, I think I read?
Yeah, I mean, it gets hard for me to figure out how to count them because I have these like project records. There's this thing I did called Wilson Hawk, which essentially is a solo record, but I called it under a different name because of the direction was kind of a radical departure for me, and I co-wrote a lot of material with a friend of mine. So, you know, but I could have counted that as a solo record, and then I had a band in the early 2000 or mid 2000 called 40 Deuce. That was another, you know, departure stylistically, and so, you know, I could count that, but it was kind of confusing for me. So at some point I have to define, you know, what constitutes a solo record. So after I did that, I realized, okay, you're at number 20 now. So it's a nice number to use. And, yeah, so here it is, and it's out. And like I said, I normally didn't do music videos in the past, very many at least, but now we're kind of churning these videos out to kind of, you know, draw attention to the record. So it's kind of fun for me to do that.
Nice. I'd like to see that. We're
now, do they still cost a fortune? I'm sorry.
That's right.
No, that's why I can do it.
That's cool.
I have money to spend on all that shit.
Now, is it what is your preferred format for showing these nowadays? I mean, you know, it's certainly not, you know, MTV is not what it used to be back in the day. Is it a whole YouTube thing that really works now?
Yeah, I just pretty much show in my house to my friends, like my friends come over. YouTube is probably, you know, I mean, there's all kinds of things out there, Vivo or whatever, but I've just been using YouTube, and I guess it's just it's kind of a way to let people know that you have, some music out there to check out, and it's everything now is so much. It's so weird because videos were really, really important, with back when MTV, showed music videos and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then that kind of died, but now it just seems like it's still just as important, but it's just a different format. It's just like on the internet.
Well, I mean, I love that you're doing it, and it's new for me to hear that artists think that it's still very important nowadays, although it's being put out there in a completely different format. But that's kind of interesting to hear. That's good to hear. I like that. I love seeing music videos. I love the fact that they're being done again. It's and that's great. Kudos, for doing that, man. That's I can't wait to watch them.
And it's nice because it's not somebody there in the audience with their iPhone,
right?
And you get that horrible sound, and it's like, but.
Oh, you mean like the people that film their iPhone?
Yeah.
That's another strange thing. Again, that's a whole other topic, but it doesn't really matter to me one way or another. I mean, what I won't accept is someone showing up with some huge expensive camera and plugging into the mixing board, and suddenly they think they're making a live DVD. Like that's like
no.
I'll stop the show for that because it's like that's something that in the end you're still making your living from people buying your name and things with your name on it, which include your records or your products or whatever. So there's no way I'm going to have somebody just kind of show up and decide to attempt to record me in what they think is a professional manner.
Mm-hmm.
But someone sitting in the front row with an iPhone because they want to document the show, that is what it is. But I still don't understand it because in my mind, it's like I've gone to see my daughter play, and the first couple times, her mom will be like, well, film it. And then here I am, I'm standing there holding this phone, getting tired, and I'm actually missing the specialness of being in the room and getting the show. So the thing that doesn't really make sense, and I don't know if people even understand it, you're sitting there focusing on making sure you're filming the show, which is going to sound like shit, and it's going to look like shit because you're going to be held hostage to that one little angle from your phone. It's like, put the phone away, sit there, watch the show, sing along if you hear a song you know, and enjoy the experience and be present. It's just odd to me. It's an odd thing. Like I would never go to a show. Here's a perfect example. I was on a friend of mine took me to the Laker game, and we have floor seats. We're sitting right next to the Laker bench, and I was going to pull out my phone and do like a little, tweet or something like that. And I got the phone out, and I'm looking at it, and I open it up, and I'm trying to find the fucking app, And meanwhile, it's happened that Kobe Bryant, I look up, he's standing right in front of me, like literally, I could kick the bottom of his sneaker with my toe. And I'm like, fuck this, man. I put the phone away. I'm like, I'm going to fucking enjoy this because I might never see this again,
Exactly. Be in the moment.
We have talked about that.
Oh, my God.
And here's the other thing. And I can, either one of you, I can ask this question. I could say, tell me about a concert that you saw when you were 16 years old and just name the band.
Right.
And you can probably recall a good portion of that. Now, it's going to be distorted because it's your memory, but you have that. You lived that experience at that time.
Right.
When you're, like he said, when you're recording through the phone, you're not even at the show. You're just trying to make something good out of...
And you're going to show part of that to somebody once, and it's never going to get looked at again. Yeah. And then you just paid all this good money for tickets, and you got great seats, and you were there to experience it, and you didn't.
Exactly.
Be in the damn moment. Be in the moment. It's just crazy. What else was I going to say? Oh, recording wise, I'm sure back in the day it was it was Marshalls with mics in front of them. What is it like today for you? Is it live? Is it virtual? Is it speakers moving air or samples? Not samples but models.
Speakers moving air.
Good.
Definitely. Good. It's the same. The only thing, everything's the same. The only thing that changed is the format. Obviously in the beginning it was tape, and then now it's digital. But other than that, nothing's really changed. I've toyed around with the the modeling, the amp farm or whatever you call it.
Plug-ins.
And there's instances where you can use that to create some cool effects. But in my opinion, there's nothing like the real deal. And it's something you can hear it, and someone can probably try to fool me and maybe succeed. But more so than what you're hearing, it's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And what it feels like will completely 100% affect and dictate the outcome in the sense of how you play and how you respond. So although it may, create the illusion of a Marshall stack that's mic'd up perfectly, when you play through that, it doesn't feel the same. If you know what it feels like to play through a real Marshall stack and have it be in a real studio through a real microphone, through a real preamp, be it a Neve or an API, through a real compressor, be it a LA2A or what have you, you know what that feels like coming out of the speakers versus some kind of digital algorithm that's emulating all that. Mm-hmm. And all that stuff that happens when you do it the real way, there's random things that are going on with the circuit, with electronics, you're dealing with tubes. It's just not the same. And so I prefer to not even look at that, because I every time I do it, it's like, all right, well, this is kind of like driving a Ferrari, but I own a Ferrari, so why bother?
Thank you.
Why bother fucking around pretending? You know what I mean? It's
Thank
like
you.
That kind of logic. It's like I don't understand. Now, if you don't have that experience, then of course, by all means, it's it helps you get close. But I'm just saying, maybe the Ferrari is a bad analogy because it sounds like pretentious. It's not what I'm trying to put across.
It's totally
the fact
cool.
that as good as it is, as great as it is, it's just not the same. It's like virtual sex is not the same as real sex. It's just simply not.
Well, I don't think you're going to find anybody that disagree with that statement right there.
That's a better analogy.
That's totally better.
It's more relatable.
Yeah. For most of our listeners, I'm sure it's more relatable. Hey, you had a studio at one time in LA. Do you still have it?
No, I had a studio for a while that I ran, and then I ended up selling it to the guys from Blink-182. Bought it.
Oh wow.
Travis and Mark bought it. And I assume they still have it, but it was kind of cool, It was more about kind of a real estate move, to be perfectly honest. Mm-hmm. And selling, going in the studio business is not necessarily something I would recommend. But at the time, I was in a position where I found a building that was purchased, and we remodeled it and held it for a few years, and when the market peaked, we flipped it and sold it, and it all made sense. But the reality of what happened when I moved the studio, like the equipment, out of my house into another building, my productivity just went way down. It was really interesting. Like I didn't record very much at all. And I mean, I did still record, around the time where I made the record Into the Black, which half of the record was done at that studio and the other half was done at my house, because that was right around the time where I gave up the studio. But it was weird. It was like I would wake up and be like, I have a couple song ideas, so maybe I'll go work on them. So I get in my car and drive down to the studio, which wasn't that far, but until I got from my house to there, it might have been 10, 15 minutes. Then I got to unlock the gate, and then I got to turn the alarm off, and then I got to fire up the recording system. And then by the time I was in a position where I was actually ready to record something, I would forget what the hell it was that I was doing there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the inspiration sometimes needs to be dealt with immediately.
Sure.
Yeah, and so I went. I don't know. My productivity went down. There's nothing like waking up at whatever time, just going into a room and throwing an idea down. And you don't have to have like a full-on recording studio. I mean, I just have components that I need. I don't have like the record plant in my garage. You know what I mean? I just have some components that I can record things properly.
Mm-hmm.
And but having it here in my house, I just find myself more productive.
So it's back in your house now.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Like I said, it's like you and I, and it doesn't necessarily need to be musically related. Like we got 6 things on the plate all the time. You wake up and you think of something,
sure,
and if you don't write it down or act on it right then,
it's gone.
It's gone. Yeah. So, man, what a luxury to actually have. And I'm assuming at this point it's more than a tiny little home studio that you have, and it enables you to really make some quality recording there. And what a pleasure it is just to be able to wake up and walk into that.
Well, it's like what we're doing right here. We just leave this stuff set up.
Oh, sure.
And I just come in and we turn things on and go, because we're hot at that point and it's time to go.
That's it. So that's cool. Well, congratulations on moving it back to your house, man. So hopefully your productivity will remain where it should be for you.
Yeah, that's right.
That's great. What else was I going to ask you before we got to wrap eventually? Any other signature gear? I mean, we know all about your tellies, and they're freaking awesome things. But any other signature gear, amps, pedals, things like that you have, or are you working on or moving towards?
Yeah, there's a pedal out right now, a signature pedal that Tech 21 is selling, and it's called Fly Rig.
Yeah,
and
seen it. Yeah.
This is an idea that originated from me. Basically, what I did a few years ago is I was doing a lot of what I would call fly dates, where I'm like, especially in Latin America, we kind of, flying from Chile to Argentina and then to Brazil and then Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes some of these runs we didn't have like our own crew, so every time you switch and go to another country, you're explaining to the local guy that's going to travel with you, how to set up the gear and how it works. And so I just didn't want to be dragging some big pedal board around, and I wanted something really simple. So I have a little bit of knowledge in electronics, and so I took a chassis and I put inside a delay pedal that had a tempo control, a 2-stage overdrive that I liked, and at the time, I was using Fender amps, so I put in the 2 switches, one for reverb, one for tremolo. And so what I ended up with was this box that was very long, very narrow, thin, small box, relatively small. It had all my essential effects into it. And so when I had the guy set the rig up, it was simple. You just plug this in to the power. You plug the 2 cables in, one to the guitar, one to the amp, and it's over. It's done. There's no messing around.
Nice.
And so I showed that to the guy that runs Tech 21, and the end result, fast forward to now, is we have this pedal called a Fly Rig, and it basically is a 2-stage overdrive that we spent 6 months working on to get it right. And then there's a delay with a tap tempo feature. And Tech 21 created the Sans amp, which is something that I've never used in the past, but it is quite popular.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is in there as well. So there's 5 foot switches. The cool thing about the Sans amp is if you don't want to use it, you don't have to. You can set it flat, and then that circuit can be used as reverb. So in essence, the pedal has 2-stage overdrive, delay with tap tempo, and reverb. And the option, if you want to go direct, you can use the Sans amp to create the sound of going through an amp. Which, based on my last conversation, obviously I'm not doing that, but if you need to, if you're forced in a situation, you never know, you're on tour and the amp they provide goes down, you still have other options.
Right, you take a DI right to the board, and
And that's not like a modeling thing. As like a Line 6 or anything. Sans amp, they actually created those years ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's through solid state electronics as opposed to some kind of digital algorithm, right?
Yeah, so it's got some it's an
analog thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's got a little life to it, and it's not so sterile.
Mm-hmm. That's very cool.
Yeah,
and it fits in your guitar case.
It fits. It's tiny, but it's still. The coolest thing about the design is, the thing is so small, but the foot switches are spaced proper. But what's really cool about it is the potentiometers are are these tiny little things, and I mean, it's still easy to turn, but once you get your settings, they kind of stay put. You know, you don't have to worry about, you know, you put your pedal away. The odds are you pull it back out, the setting's going to remain there. But the coolest thing is when you press on the overdrive to turn it on, the actual knobs light up. So that's where the LEDs are, telling you the device on or off. So the overdrive is red, the delay is blue, and the reverb sans amp is yellow. And it's just really a great design. I mean, that was the thing in working with Tech 21. They're so good at you know, just their design of things. You know, my biggest input was the concept combined with the actual overdrive, which I voiced because I wanted a specific sound.
That's cool.
Nice.
Now, you still have an endorsement with Cornford?
No, I don't have a relationship with them anymore. I still have my signature amps, and those are great amps. You know, I really love the way they sound, and I have the option to use them from time to time. But I ended up right now I'm using the Marshalls. I bounce around a lot with amps because I oftentimes find myself in positions where, like I said before, you know, okay, well, we have a string of shows in Chile, and so okay, well, Chile I can't get a Fender Vibra King down there for some reason. So what can I play? So I end up bouncing around with amps, you know, but I have a list of amps that I know I can get, you know, the tone out of. But for me, the top of the list is, like I said earlier, the Marshall Plexi, you know, a 50 watt or 100 watt. Actually, the amp that I really love is the little 18 watt combo, the 1974X.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's like if I had one amp that I could take to the studio and make a record with, it would be that one. Because you can go. It is so odd. It's two knobs. It's a volume knob and a tone knob.
Yep.
But it's such a diverse amp if you know how to use it.
Yeah.
That would be like the one go-to amp for me. You know.
Very nice.
Very cool.
Yeah, I love the low wattage thing myself. So
yeah, Jeff is the godfather at low wattage amps.
That's right.
That's great. Yeah, I built a Tweed Deluxe a few years ago, and that is that's a great amp to record with. You know.
Yeah.
It's, you know, just well, I have a live in the studio performance thing, and for a song I did called Player, and I plugged into that. And I love the tone I got from it. It sounds like a blaring Marshall stack, and it's just kind of little, you know, 18 watt combo.
Nice.
That is too cool.
Nice. Yeah, I know that's a great experience to have, and you don't have, you know, a ton of SPL blowing you off the stage right out of the studio. It's great. It's great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, Richie, we could talk gear for another hour, man, but we've held you up enough, and we've got to roll. So I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy, and
yes, sir.
You know, probably just getting over jet lag and everything else. So thank you very much for taking the time. We had a good time. I hope you did too.
All right. Well, thank you for the interview, and I hope to see you when I'm back there playing in your area.
Yeah, we'll
Absolutely,
definitely keep it. Do you have a tour schedule out yet for anything, solo or dogs or anything?
Not yet, but the plan is to be back out touring sometime, I would think realistically in the fall, late summer.
Okay.
Cool.
Good. We'll definitely keep an eye out for you, and we'll come by and say hey.
Yeah, man.
For sure. Love to see you.
Sounds good.
All right, Richie, thank you very much, man. Have a great rest of the day, and thanks again for taking the time.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Well, and there you have the story.
What a cool guy.
Very, very cool guy. And
you know, I'm starting to see a pattern, and I read this the other day. And I didn't even say anything to you, so you got that look on your face, which I always love.
Okay.
Because you're like, where the hell's he going with this? So sometimes I wish I could just capture the look on Jeff's face, because he's always like, "Oh Christ, we're driving off the cliff." No, but
it's coming off the rails.
No, but I read a story one time where Paul Gilbert literally thought that you know, you didn't have to use your hands when you pump gas to hold the little gas thing up, you know, the lever on the gas.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said he thought it was only new cars that could do that. But then he saw one
I
day...
remember reading this article.
Yeah,
yes.
Then he saw one day that there was actually a lever there that you just click it over.
So it would stay.
So it would stay.
You know, right.
And what I figured is, and this is now Richie has he has a lot of knowledge about gear. Because we were talking to him and he was talking about circuits and stuff like that. But
he has enough knowledge to build an amplifier. You know, that's more than most.
That's a lot more than most. But what I notice is it's like guys like him, the other stuff just goes away. They don't worry about the newfangled thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, I noticed that with a lot of these guys that are like really, really. Like you can't. They have that boundary just doesn't exist. They know what they want. They obtain that, but then it's the pedal to the metal. They don't harp on that kind of thing. Now Richie, of course, he says he's constantly the amp thing is just because of fly dates and things like that.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a great little device there, man. That really is.
And he has a huge knowledge, of course. I mean, it's probably not good for my point, but I'm just starting to see when I read these things about these different artists, they, it's right here and you can show me, but I got my thing here.
I'm good. I know what works for me.
Yeah. You can't put like a Joe Bonamassa in there because he owns everything.
Everything.
But for the most part, when you see these guys, they kind of lock in and that's where it's. I read that.
Well, I mean, honestly, you could even carry that out to Joe B because even though he might own multiple of everything that you could drop a name of in the next 5 minutes.
Most of his stuff is built off of Marshalls.
Well, but he's a lot into the Fenders now too.
Yeah,
the tweed
that's
Fenders
true.
too.
Yeah,
but those are all. If you want to just go big on the category, they're all tube amps. You don't see him into the modeling and the virtual and the plugins, and he found that real amps work for him. And, he's got a plethora of them, a full palette thereof. But he found that tube amps are what he wants. And like Richie was saying, it just feels different. It makes you, and it makes you play different.
Yes, it does.
So he found that this works for him, and he can, when he plugs into a tube amp, regardless of what it is, he can play and sound like Joe Bonamassa. And I'm sure Richie found the same thing. It's like when I'm playing and I'm executing well, and it's working, and it kind of sounds like this. But why the hell would you want it kind of sound like and kind of feel like when you get the real thing? Plug into the real damn thing and play your guitar.
And I agree 100%. I don't know. I think we overanalyze things a lot.
Totally.
And guitar players, we're kind of neurotic anyhow. And but I think there's also been like this giant push sales pitch wise from these companies to go, well, you can have the sound of the 1959 Marshall without all the noise, and it never changes.
I love noise,
and you never have to put tubes in it. And it's like, that's great, but guess what? There's something about that beast breathing in the corner that's totally different.
Right, that noise becomes an inherent part of the sound that it's generating. Just like when on a fade out, there's some pickup hum that's happening. All of that. It becomes a part of the sound. However subtle it is, it becomes a part of the sound. And you take that away, and it just gets, it may get more quote unquote perfect, but in my ear, it just gets more sterile, and sterile is not necessarily perfect.
Sort of like how we started the show with the whole thing of recording.
Right. Exactly.
Like if you don't want your album to be this glass, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. It's like there's something we've gotten too good.
True.
Science came in, and
you got to start thinking outside. Here, I got an example about thinking outside the box a little bit. I don't know if you saw it. Our good friend Shay Welsh sent me a post. I reposted it on Facebook, but he was out producing and/or engineering somebody's new release. He was out in Lukather's studio in L.A., and it was a picture of him and the band and his East 30 and the vertical cabinet that he has.
Uh-huh.
And he said, just finished recording, this new stuff at Luke's studio. Just reamped all the guitar tracks through the East and drums as well.
Through the
East. So think outside the box, people.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
So
think outside the box.
That's pretty cool.
I make a damn good drum amp, too. And on that note.
Well, with that said, until next time, my friend.
There better be.
I am Mick Marcelino.
That's right.
And you.
Still Jeff Bober.
And we are saying.
Onward.
Be sure and follow the show on Twitter @AmpsandAxes. Also, make sure you like the show on Facebook. For news, comments, and everything else, visit the webpage ampsandaxescast.com. Thanks for listening.